to our first Fireside Chat for this season. I'm very excited to have Aleksandar Icev today with us, who is a Director of Engineering at Google. And we have a variety of topics that we want to cover and a lot of insights that I'd like to get from him on not only how Google does things, but also how smaller companies and any engineering team in the world can benefit from those and implement them in their own setup. Before we start, just a quick introduction for everyone who's new to this event. So Adeva is a remote network of tech professionals. Our mission is to enable work without boundaries, and these events are kind of in line with that mission, focused on enabling kind of learning without boundaries. So for people anywhere in the world to be able to learn from tech leaders and established companies without having to be physically there. So without further ado, Alec, welcome and thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Hey, hi, it's really great to talk to you today. Really thank you for the invitation. Looking forward to chat.
Awesome. Can you start with a quick introduction so that everyone can, understand why you're here and what you can share with us?
Yeah, so those intros goes really easy. I grew up, I was born in Skopje, I grew up in Macedonia. I went and I did my undergrad degree at universities and Cyril and Methodius. And then, I applied for graduate degrees in US, right? So I did my master's in machine learning back, probably 20 plus years ago in Massachusetts. And then from there, I built my career in the States. I worked for one interesting startup. It was called Genome Quest. You can Google it out. Now it's slightly a bigger company. It was doing basically search of. It was a search engine for DNA sequences. So,
interesting.
At that, age, the genome was fully sequenced, right? Probably like 20 plus years ago. And then the pharmaceutical companies, they were starting to patent DNA sequences. So it was really important if you're discovering like some new medicine or something that has like a genetical dependencies, that you go and search to see who filed patents. And then it grew overall as more and more genes were being discovered and their functions were being discovered. The database of genes is just like a growing, and their functions and their possible, utilities as part of different, medical research efforts, right, grew over time. So it was a very, very, very interesting effort. And then that company grew over time significantly. And then from there, I moved to a company that was called BA Systems. There was like a middleware enterprise company that Oracle acquired probably around 10 years ago or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I moved to Google. And I have been at Google since then. I joined as a beginner software engineer level, right? And then I grew through the ranks over time. So that's my short kind of professional career path.
And that's over 17 years, right? You're at
Google? Yes. I've spent the last 17 years. I joined Google just after the IPO. So the IPO was 2004. They started to recruit in Seattle, where I was based significantly. So it was a small company. It was a very interesting time when Google was growing significantly and hiring, but it had like a really startup-y feel, which I also enjoyed, and I witnessed a lot of growth over the years, which was amazing as well.
So how does it look to go from a software engineer to director of engineering at Google, and especially with the difference of the culture back then and the culture, or maybe the culture is still the same, but the size of the company has grown a lot?
I mean, as you have noticed, it didn't happen overnight, right? So it's a lot of hard work, right? That goes a lot of kind of learning, a lot of achievements, a lot of I think that the major point that I want to convey is learn through your career, right? More you learn, more you'll advance, more you learn, right? If you think about this. And the point is that like sometimes, right, there are a lot of kind of smart people. They get advanced degrees and they sort of go into, okay, I'm just into the execution mode in my career. I know a lot, like, and sometimes, like the life creates, you can't like learn as when you're in a grad school and and work at your job, and you have like family obligations and all that stuff. So, but the main point is my progression was always looking for opportunities for growth and roles and opportunities where I can learn more, where I can acquire skills and where I can like challenge myself, right? So I didn't stay statically in one area at Google, right? So I was always looking to kind of, create like a set of achievements and then look for opportunities where I can stretch myself. So that was, like a guiding, one of the guiding principles. And then every year, right, have some learning goals, right? What are the skills, or, like what is the technical expertise, or what is the, communicational skills, right? Soft skills, like learning more about not only about the technology, but about the economy, about, like many, like neighboring areas that are, like important that I didn't have time to study in school full time, right? Growing and being trained as an engineer, right? That, like faculty in Skopje was electrical engineering and computer science, right? So it was like very, very heavy on the technical side, right?
Yeah. Great. That's an excellent point. Before we continue the discussion, I just want to remind everyone that there is a link in the comments where you can ask your questions. Make sure to use that, because at the end of the conversation, we'll go through all of those and try to answer as many as possible. So back to my questions. Let's talk a bit about managing engineering teams on such a large scale. What does your day look like? What are your responsibilities at the moment as a director of engineering?
I mean, that's a great question, right? Like I also want to emphasize, right, as probably most of the folks, like on your team and on this stream are in the software industry, right? I mean, managers and directors of software engineering, they don't usually fall from the sky, right? Being some MBA type of, they grew from the ranks, right? So those are the engineers that, like progress, and then they find themselves, right, really, like passionate or being sometimes usually asked, or they have some proclivity, right, to lead and manage people. And I think that's a very important thing for every engineer as she is progressing in their career, to make a proper assessment, right, of himself or of herself, right? Saying, hey, I really enjoy coding all the day, right? And I know what I'm doing, like I'm being paid well, like I just want to progress, like my seniority and my career through the IC role, right? Being an individual contributor. And there is like a ton of work as you see. And if you analyze the last 20 years in the software industry, right, the number of the software engineering jobs keeps growing. So even I was looking at the US labor of statistics of US jobs being open, and the estimate is around 10% year over year, there'll be growth in software engineering jobs, right? So then that's the first myth, that every software engineer doesn't mean that, like in the career, if you don't become a manager or if you don't grow to a director, you're not going to be successful. So that self-reflection is, how do I see myself, like in 5 years, 10 years in the software industry, right? It's very important. And then for the folks that have like a passion to lead, right, to manage, they have, like willingness to kind of, stretch themselves, kind of learn, acquire more skills. They have some capabilities to, like align set of people, right, towards common goals and stuff like that. Then the progression goes towards the management roles. And I mean, it's very often that, like there was a kind of one saying that I earned early on in the software industry, that hey, software is easy, but people are hard. Right?
Right.
So it boils down to acquiring a lot of like soft skills, right? A lot of kind of leadership skills that in some way are uniform across many industries, right? Or many like professions. So I think that part is very important, because if you see, like, there are a lot of kind of oxygen studies, especially in the technical field, and some of those you can search them. Google did them maybe 10 years ago. They're called kind of oxygen studies what's important for leaders, right? What are for technical leaders? Because Google is a technical company by itself. And then you'll see that like all of the soft skills, like creating, for example, psychological safety on your team, right? Then empowering people, not micromanaging people, right? Then like setting the strategy and the vision for the team, right? Then helping the team to execute, right, towards the common goals, right? And you'll see, like that, like a sort of 4 or 5 important things for leaders. There is no like, oh, what is the technical strength, like of the leader, right? It comes, right, but it comes around place 7 or 8. So for me, it was interesting, eye-opening, right? Because usually, right, we were selecting like the leaders from the most technically strong, like, oh, this group, oh, that's the best coder in the team. That person has to be a leader, right? But then you analyze that, like the game of leading, managing set of people, it's like completely different than solving, like technical problems with a high accuracy, reliability in amount of time. So that was an interesting kind of eye-opening that helped me personally, right, on making decisions how to build and structure teams in general.
That's an excellent point, and it's something that I also wanted to touch on. You mentioned about we always chose the best coder to progress into a leadership role, and that's a common attitude that I've noticed with a lot of companies. And oftentimes, when you do choose the best individual contributor to become a leader, you end up with people who are not contributing as much on code level as that person did, and on the other side you end up with a leader which is not suitable for leading a team, and we've seen burnout, we've seen people who are not, their expectations are not aligned with what the position requires. So I wanted to talk a bit about this, how to avoid this scenario, both from the developer's perspective and also from the leaders, the company's perspective, because how to choose the leadership roles, the people for the leadership roles carefully to avoid this. And on the other side, you mentioned finding your passion on individual level, but what are some other tips for people who want to progress to understand whether that's the right path for them?
I mean, this is a great question, right? And usually it cannot be done as a playbook explanation. It's more of an art, right, than science. I mean, a couple of observations, right? I mean, I think you raised outstanding points, right? Usually, right, I think that's still the norm, right? You're looking for one of the best kind of technical people because on the team, right? Because you want like a technical leader to start managing them, right? And the deliverables are mostly technical, right? So you expect that the most knowledgeable person, right, will be able to assess and lead the team in the most meaningful way, right? And in most of the companies, right, I mean, like that's still the priority model of thinking, right? And it's okay, right? I have a couple of caveats, right? That person has to be really aware, right, in the role that she or he is stepping in. So there has to be in-depth conversation. Do you really want to do this, right? Why, like, why are you going there, right? Let me give you an example, right? Google has been famous for hiring, like a lot of kind of smart people over time and all this stuff. And usually, right, I mean, like, let's say that you're a young student, right, coming with a lot of, ACM, coming from ACM competitions, having like a really great score, great scores and all that stuff, right? So how do you compare that type of kind of technical strength with how much you're going to progress in your career leading and managing people, right? Usually the correlations are weak. That's what my impression. I don't have like a data statistics, right? But the pure kind of technical prowess, correlation to that, to how well you're going to lead and manage people in IT companies, right? Probably the correlation, my estimate, is like like on the lower side. So now it comes to your question is like, okay, what does that person really want to do, right? To be really honest with herself and with the manager, right, and with the leaders of the company, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and whether they see themselves successful in that role. Because as you said, right, you become a manager of people, right? You're technical, even you're a first level manager, right? Your daily technical contributions are decreasing, right? Because there's an overhead. You have to work with your product managers, program managers, partners, right? Sometimes with customers, right? Sometimes, and a lot of documentation goes in, and a lot of coordination, right? And then what's usually happening is becoming harder and harder, your code, to be on the critical path for the release that week or that day, right? And the team is saying, hey, we're waiting on your code review, right? Or on your code, and say, I'm stuck in meetings half day, right? And then there is a very interesting trend. If the relationships in the team are good, they're starting to isolate you a little bit. No, you don't need to own that component anymore. It's fine. We're going to handle it for you and all the stuff, right? So you see like interesting dynamic when the team is sensing, hey, our manager is really strong. He's really great technically, but how about we remove some code ownership from him, because it's sort of hard to tell him, hey, you're on a critical path and we're blocked on you, but let's manage that underneath, right? So it's a very interesting dynamic happening, right? And that person is like, I can't write code every day, right? I'm blocking my team. Okay, so let me go. So I see a usual pattern. Okay, let me own something that's on the non-critical path, right? And they create some toy projects, right, in order to entertain themselves, right? It's a very interesting dynamic. So that's why the honesty at the beginning, it's very important. I say, okay, do I really see myself here, right? I think it's responsibility on the leadership on the flip side, right? To set like the compensation model very well to allow folks to grow on the individual contributor level, right? And be paid same as the senior manager at that level, right? Because yes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But it's also the part which is not monetary. Like, do I feel like I'm growing in my position, or am I just in the same role, but I'm getting paid more?
Yes, exactly. So that's the personal question. Okay, how I'm gonna grow more in the next kind of couple of years, right? And like what I'm gonna enjoy more, how I'm gonna contribute more, right? That's like the key question that every person needs to face, right? And some folks, right, if they're honest to themselves, that really enjoy technical work the whole day and coding, and they're professional coders in the world, right? That you see the joy, right, that they create, right? And they're 10 times multipliers, right, in efficiency towards an average code, right? And if that's like the facing, it's important to keep that person, pay them very well, maybe pay them more than directors, right? You don't care, right? I mean, like if that person is a multiplier, it's like an energy force, right? And I really enjoy working with coders like that. It's like, it's a fantastic persons, right? But you see the passion, right? And you see they learn, they really enjoy, they mentor more junior folks, right? They train, they don't manage, right? When it comes to kind of deliverables, career processes and all that stuff, right? All the things that take a lot of energy, right? In organizations to make, right? They don't deal with that. But the pure kind of architecture, coding, and all the stuff, that's where they shine. You want to keep those people if they're happy in those roles and pay them extremely well.
This is an excellent point and a very unique perspective. I mean, I'm asking this question, by the way, to everyone who joins us for this chat, because it's my favorite. I see it a lot, and I want to get as many perspectives as possible on this topic. And this is the first time I hear this, and I loved it.
Cool.
Let's see. In terms of scaling the engineering teams, assessing performance when they join, or vetting, hiring before that, what are some of your processes that you mentioned you have built your unique process for building teams over the years? Things that you can share with the audience.
Yeah, so building teams, like one important thing that I have learned, and I know, folks, if you're following kind of Ray Dalio, he's one of the most, owners of one of the most kind of hedge funds in the world. And he went kind of very public in the last kind of couple of years with a lot of, sharing a lot of learnings from his career, right? And one, it boiled down to team building, right? And it came down, and it has there is like a free assessment that you can take, which is analyzing your own strengths, right? And there are multiple methods, Briggs-Myers, right? Strengths Finder by online, and I highly advocate to every professional, right? Or every even student. I'm doing that with my kids and their sort of middle school and high school age, right? To learn very well what their inherent strengths are. So some of those are psychological profiles, right? It's like, the question is whether you like more, I don't know, like fish that swims or rabbit that runs, and all the stuff. And based on those questions, right, you get some kind of profiling. And I hope many professionals on this stream, right, have done that. But I really like the Ray Dalio model, because what he's saying is that you make like a scorecards out of your strengths, right? And when you work in teams, right, you make your team members aware a lot about your strengths and about your weaknesses, right? So like, let me pick an example, right? If you're not kind of really strong on discipline, right, you can be like a great kind of engineer, very visionary, right? And there are people, right, they're just like not strong on discipline, right? And let's say you want to be a technical program manager, right? That the role is like to like manage the releases, right? Or like manage the core processes and execution in a given week on the team, right? It's a little bit hard, right, to fit that person with that type of responsibilities, right? And that's why that dynamics on a team building, right, it's sort of like a building, like large kind of Lego tower, but with complex Lego tower, but analyzing every team member's kind of strengths of weaknesses. And you want, right, ideally, my formula is, right, you want like to play on people's strengths as much as possible, right? Yeah. So there are people, for example, let me give another example. They don't, like in that kind of trying to kind of woo other people, present in front of other people, right? You have some folks that really have strength around that, and it's an inherent strength, right? They enjoy being in front of people, talking, presenting, sharing their ideas, and all that stuff, right? There are other people extremely smart, right? But more on the introverted side, right? If you ask them, hey, go talk in front of 10 people, right? They'll tremble, right? Some of them may have anxiety attacks, right? But extremely competent people. So it's very important for the leaders, right, to learn and go through those processes and learn their people's kind of skills and strengths. And then how you align and build a team, right? Play on people's strengths, right? As much as you can. Say, okay, I don't know. Katerina, it's a great presenter, right? I mean, like when the team needs to present to neighboring teams, right? Or to somebody outside, I mean, doesn't mean that she takes credit for everything that's being done, but that's her role, right? Everybody works on the presentation, but she's going to enjoy, like sometimes it's selling software, sometimes selling ideas, right? And, structuring around that, it's a very complicated process, right? When you think about this. But what I'm really advocating, go and learn first as a leader or as a professional, learn your strengths really well. If let's say someone's going to wake in the middle of the night, is going to say, okay, what are your top 5 strengths and what are your top 5 weaknesses? Can you please answer? I've tested a lot of people over time, right, in the professional field. Let me give you an example. I expect that around 60 to 70% will struggle to answer that question right on the spot. Not from, like being shy to open themselves, but they really don't know. Because what it actually takes taking a lot of tasks and taking some time to self-introspect themselves, right? It requires thinking of how do they behave in the situation? Why did I get excited about that project, right? What fulfilled me today, right? And analyzing all the actions and happenings during the day, right? To map to, because, like, this is my kind of key strength, right? I deployed my key strength today at work or at home and all this stuff. So, yeah.
And what happens if someone wants to build a new strength? Like if someone, for example, is not as good at, in presenting or is more introverted but wants to try out, is there any process you have around that for growing outside of their current roles within the team?
So it's a very interesting question, and like I can abstract it a little bit more, right? Up level a bit more. And there's one interesting question that Warren Buffett has with his pilot, right? Mm-hmm. And he asked the pilot, okay, hey, so they had a conversation about life, career, and all that stuff. And he asked him, okay, just tell me, right, what are the top 20 things that you want to achieve in your life, right? So we can have kind of more, more kind of structured and, discussion. Mm-hmm. Instead of a generic going over everything that's happening, like in somebody's life, right? And, the pilot came with 20, okay? And, like, what do you want to achieve, right? What skills, what do you want to acquire, on every kind of, in every field, right? Multiple fields, right? Many, ideas, but distilled from 1 to 20. And he said, okay, now go and please cross, right? From number 3 to number 20. Just cross, forget about it, right? Just, pick 1 and 2, right? And then, like, focus your energy mostly on number 1. If you're blocked on number 1, right, then you can spend a little bit of time on 2. So there are many. So this is like when it comes to kind of strengths and weaknesses, right? You can put a lot of energy, right, to kind of train yourself and build, trying to improve on the things that your inherent weaknesses, right? And in some situations, right, it's required. Right. Sometimes, you don't have like a luxury to have like a team of 60, 6 complementary persons, and you can redistribute the tasks, and somebody, you have to deliver every day, and you have to have the discipline, right, to deliver whatever you have committed and all that jazz, right? So it's important, right? But my philosophy is, hey, always look for roles and for projects and for companies, right? And for, like setups where you can deploy most of your strengths. Mm-hmm. Play more of your strengths, right? And be aware of them and talk to your manager, right? Talk to your directors, right? Talk to your, like owners, private owners in the company, in smaller companies, right? Wherever at home, the same deal, right? Let's say, like you live in a family, right, or with a partner, and you have some joint activities and all the stuff, right? Yeah, let's say you're planning a trip, right? Go when you do the activities, saying, hey, okay, those are my strengths. Can I do those, right? And that's how I see that.
Very interesting perspective. One more question, and we go with the audience questions. So this something more like a sum up. We talked a lot about different areas of the business processes, the engineering processes. So like a small sum up of what are the things that we discussed today, or anything else that you can think of which smaller companies can learn from, or any person that is in our audience today can take away from here.
I mean, one thing is like, when building software, right? Like one thing that I have learned, there has to be, it's a very actual similar thing with the other industries, right? Even we consider ourselves, right, one of the newest industry, right? Really growing rapidly in the last kind of 10, 20 years. But it comes to the relentless focus on the user, right? I mean, you see like the companies that are doing extremely well, there is like a relentless, or the products, right? Or there is a relentless focus on the user or on the customer, right? Depends whether you're in the user facing or in the enterprise software building game, right? In any way, right? My recommendation is like learn your user. Like when we talked about career, it's like learning you, right? And the team and your place in the team, learning yourself because you're building your career, right? In the building software game, is like learn your software, learn your users, right? And customers and how they use your product, right? To the maximum. That means like instrumenting every click, right? Every action that they do on your, on your product, right? And then aggregate that across, all customers, across, all time zones, all dimensions, all possible slices of the data that you can get on how the customers are using your software. And then what you build has to be highly correlated on how you make your customers more happier, right? It's like you'll see a lot of, like, I think a lot of energy in many software companies, at least the ones that I have worked on, is being spent in, okay, what should we really build here? Oh, I have a proposal set of idea, you have a proposal set of idea, then let's debate next week, and then the week after that, option A, option B, the whole month went away, right? So I see those debates, right, whenever, right, the usage metrics, right, and the metrics that you want to optimize, like your product, right, are absent or semi-absent from that discussion. So what I'm recommending, however small you're starting, right, or however large, like product you have, measure everything, right? And then the discussion is, which is also not easy, right, with the leaders of that project, right? It's like, okay, what are the key metrics that we want to move on? And that's like it's a tricky discussion sometimes, right? And that's the discussion where most of the energy should go, right? So, okay, I want to increase engagement. I want to increase like a in-depth use on some feature. I want to increase, perceived kind of, latency, responsiveness, right? Or I want to increase the usage of the new features. I don't care about the old features, right? But you have to align, saying, okay, for the next 3 months, for the next quarter, those are the metrics, or ideally for the next year, those are the metrics that I want to go up, right? Because you'll see all of the companies that create immense success, right, in the IT field, they have inside religious obsessions over the users.
And data.
And data, right? Data, how the users are using the product, right? And then they use the data, right, which sometimes it's a lot of, like statistics and experiment and analysis and data mining, right, to find the patterns, right, into the usage data, right, and act on that.
Right. Great. There are some questions in the comments. Please move them to Slido because we'll be going through the list over there so that we don't miss it. There's some anonymous asking what you find the worst thing about working at Google, and you can choose not to answer this if you don't want to.
I mean, listen, I really enjoy every company, right? That I have worked for, and I think that every company that everybody in the audience have worked at has like a plus or minuses, right? So the important thing is that in every situation, right, where you are, this is my kind of generic advice, regardless of the type of a company, to know what you want, right? I find like dealing with people usually that, like when it comes to this question, and think about it, it's also about all the conversations that you have, right? There's like a really great book that I advise to everybody. It's called kind of Critical Conversations. You can look it up. So it's not only about career, about your project, what you really want, right? But what do you actually want in every conversation, right? You want to express your ideas, you want to convince somebody, you want to align the team, you just want to feel heard, right? And all the stuff. So a lot about happiness, about work in general, it comes to managing yourself, right? And how do you interact with others, what the intentions are, right? And what do you really want, right? So it's been like a very eye-opening, right? To be open with you, I've read this book maybe, like 6-7 years ago, right? It was very eye-opening, right? You have a conversation, you have like a debate with somebody at work, okay, I think 6Y, and then, it's like, okay, we're talking about it for 30 minutes. What do I really want here, right? I mean, like, and out of this discussion to happen, right? And it's the same question, right, with friends, right, at home, right, when you have like a different opinion. What do you really want, right? But it's a very when you impose that question, right, it creates a lot of clarity, right? And I think it can be used kind of really well to manage kind of happiness and work, how you interact with others, and how you move towards different projects and stuff like that.
Okay, this one is very interesting. What challenges did you have switching the mindset between the different roles you went by? So from developer to director of engineering.
So, like I knew early on, right, that I want to lead people. Like I consider that as my inherent strength. I enjoy aligning set of people towards like common set of ideas and building a teams to execute towards them. So early on, I did self-introspection and I realized that, right? So first I grew through the technical ranks, and then on the first opportunity, when there's an opportunity, and like I was leading without managing, right? So I was like a technical lead from an individual. Then like when the opportunity came, I became like a technical lead, and then like when the opportunity came, I moved to the management role. And then you realize, right? You create, like you execute, right? You create success, and then the opportunities are opening up, right? And then you create your reputation, right? So guard your reputation, right? Be pretty, like it's important to whatever you sign for, right? Sometimes it's not going to end up like what you thought after, because things, right? You go to work on a new project, right? The project is like the technology behind it, it's like the people behind it, right? It's like the team, the management structure, it's like the customers, the reality of the economy, or where you're selling and all that. There are many variables whether a different project will be successful commercially or not, right? And then, like, but execute very well, right? I mean, like what I tried, like always to stay, right? To stay, like on different kind of areas and on projects, right? Till I deliver sufficient success, right? It's not like, hey, jump on this and then 6 months on something else, and then after 6 months on something else, just like trying to switch and learning something new. And you see that in the industry, right? I mean, like I see, for example, a lot of hopping right now, especially thinking with how in US, I guess in Europe, it's kind of very similar with the larger companies providing kind of equities and all the stuff. So there's some incentive into the system every couple of years to switch, because you get like a higher signing bonus, and then you get, like more stocks and all the stuff. So I see a lot of trends of kind of switching companies every couple of years, and it's okay. It's economical incentive, right? But think about this, right? It's like at some time point, right? Is if you want to make like a progression, you're selling yourself, and your past execution and deliverables are selling yourself as well. And you also realize that our world is pretty small, right? Even we think we're globally IT companies everywhere, right? But like there are a lot of people that work with you in the past that like can be asked, or I usually ask for references and all that stuff. So have in mind that everything that you're doing now, right, will have implications 5 years or 10 years from now, right? So my advice is, right, like when you sign for something, right, set some reasonable bar of the success that you want to contribute to that project, right? And then think about this, I know 2 years from now, how like what did you accomplish? Is it enough? Did you learn, like sufficiently, and you're ready to move on.
Great. There's a question to repeat the name of the book. I think it was Critical Conversations, right?
Yes, Critical Conversations, yes.
Okay. What are some interesting domains that Google is applying machine learning to?
Machine learning, listen, I did my research in machine learning. That was like 20 years ago. And back then it was, that the processing power, right, even now on deep learning, on neural nets, is like picking up in a way that it can be utilized, like in many applications, right? And you see the growth of machine learning becoming crazy and almost being embedded in almost every product, right? But it didn't used to be like that 20 years ago. But when you think about this, right, it's at the end of the day, it's an efficiency model, right? You can look it through that lens, right? It's an efficiency technology, right? Because it learns from the data. It's trying to, predict what's the best possible answer from multiple options. And in a way, right, if you want to generalize, it's like the human brain, right? The highest, model of AI that we know, that still the software cannot cross. Mm-hmm. So where it is applied now, it's applied almost everywhere, right? And if you analyze every kind of major kind of software companies, you have machine learning almost everywhere, right? So, because it saves, think about it, right? It's a significant productivity improvement, right, on the software side. And I think realistically, there's the future, right? Whether you're scrolling through, Instagram videos or TikTok videos or YouTube videos or photos, right, or applications, right? It's like all of those applications, the user applications, they learn about you, right, and they want to show you, right, the video that will have the the highest engagement, right? They want to keep you inside, right? They want to keep you engaged, right? All of the user-facing products, they want to keep you engaged as much as possible. So they all use machine learning in what they show you, like how they learn from your interactions and stuff like that. And you have like now, like a significant push in all the enterprise software, right, to replicate whatever the user software was doing in the last kind of 10 years, right? At the end of the day, right, enterprise users in a given bank on some, like application software are users, right? You want them to be able to execute their tasks more efficiently. You want to predict where they struggle most, right, and have that most prominently displayed, right? You want to predict their next action right after they do something. So just like make all of the workers efficient. So I see a lot of, acceleration right into the field, and my prediction is just gonna, go much faster, right?
There is one interesting question that's following up on our discussion about playing by strength. So the question is what you do when it comes to mentoring. If you are playing by the strength only when someone is less capable than someone else needs to be mentored, how do you balance that?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So the mentoring, it's an interesting philosophy, right? So I had like official mentors, and I still have, right, people that I consider mentors that from time to time I go, right, and I ask for questions and just I use them mostly as a sounding board, right? So I highly advocate for the most junior people, right, to have, especially laterally, right, people that they don't, maybe if they're not even in their company chain inside, right, or if they're inside of their company, somebody lateral to your department, right, that can give you an outside perspective, right? That can give you, like a lot of, like advice. Okay, this is where I was like 10 years ago, right? And usually the relationship is like using a person, right? That's kind of very lateral, that has some vested interest into you to become more successful, right? So when you build that relationship, it's important to set the expectations, right? The mentor is not there to help you, right? It's like to give you advice, to kind of groom you a little bit, right? But what it comes out of those, like mentor-mentee relationships, it's a relationship building. Is the relationship that will stay over the years. That's kind of very, very successful if you're into that. So that's why my advice is like find mentors that sort of you think are your role models. All right. In reality, they're not going to solve many of your problems, right? Probably none of your problems. They'll be to listen you, to kind of like support you, give you advice from time to time, right? But what you're gonna do, you're gonna use that time to learn from them. So if you twist the relationship, right, what you're gonna use really the mentor. Say, hey, I think that person is really successful. I think I can learn a lot from that person, right? So instead of using the person to give you a lot of advices, right, you use the person with a lot of you prepare very well, right, and you try to learn as much as possible from that person, right? The person that you want to be 20 years from now or 10 years from now. So that's how I would structure it. But back on the concreteness of the questions, it will go again into the strengths kind of weaknesses discussions about many topics. I realize that many topics in that relationship end up with that. Okay, why do you want to go for that job, right? I mean, like, or for that team, or you want to move laterally, or do something. How the question is, okay, are you going to utilize your strengths more, right? Are you going to learn more into that role? It's very simple how many of the discussions about the career, right? It's like it end up around those two variables. Because all of the happiness, let me say one more thing, because all of the happiness is a derivative out of that, right? If you're in a given role, and if you're not growing, you're not learning, right? And you're not utilizing your strength, you're not going to be happy. And then it's going to be, my manager is bad, the company is bad, this is bad, my teammates are bad, and all the stuff, right? It's usually that pattern of unhappiness that shows, oh, it's not me. Sometimes it's not me, right? I mean, like, but I think it's like much smaller percentage of cases.
Right. I believe that the point is more to focus on growing in the things that are your strength instead of working with only people who are strong technically, right? So for anyone, it's not conflicting with mentoring, but it goes side by side because I understand what my strengths are, and based on that, I choose the area where I will be able to contribute most. And then even if I'm a junior in that area, I can grow, but I can grow more easily than I would if I chose something that was my weakness.
Exactly.
Okay, let's see. There are a lot of questions. How was the first month as director of engineering at Google? So challenges, adaptation.
I mean, for me, to be open, it was a career progression. So I got promoted, right, leading a set of engineering teams, from being a senior engineering manager to a director. So the title, it was just a title change for me, right? Nothing practically changed. I mean, of course, right? Hire you. You're all aware, right? You're all, Katrina showed me that, at least a lot of, very successful people invited, right? More senior you become, the expectations are becoming larger and larger, right? So that's always a challenge, right? And that's another advice that I want to give your people, right? Because at the end of the day, right, you can't, my opinion is that you can't have successful career, right, unless your holistic life, it's successful up to some extent, right? I mean, like, you can see a lot of people that are very successful, right? You can see, oh, this person kind of grew significantly. But when you analyze their holistic life, right, or you learn a little bit more, you'll see a lot of sacrifices, right, made on personal plan, right, to make career success. And it comes up, that's another interesting thing that I learned, that, and it comes to the dopamine and serotonin analysis, right, of the key kind of hormones that make people happy. Right. So the game is, hey, you want during the day, in the morning, you want to chase something, right? You want to, go after something, right? Achieve something and get your dopamine up, right? So you have to have some work, right? That's what I'm saying, regardless where you are, right? Whether you're in the field, kind of, weeding and seeding and growing apples or all the stuff, or you're kind of building software, convincing people, or crafting great ideas and all that stuff. But all the people are designed to kind of go and chase something and get your dopamine up after they achieve something. But then when the night comes, right, you have to have something that brings your serotonin up, and the serotonin goes up from enjoying the things that you already have, right? So they analyze, like, the most kind of happiest people are they have something during the day that they chase, they're happy, they achieve, right? But during the night they come, usually kind of home, right? And they have something that they enjoy, whether that's kind of partner, whether that's like a kids, family, friends, parents, right? Sisters, brothers, right? But they have that, like, close-knit friends, right? That they enjoy, that they have during the night, right? So that's why that you see, like, it's not like a career balance, but it's a natural, the balance that exists into the nature. So it's a very, very interesting, like, theory, or, saying.
Yeah, it's a great point. We can often forget that second part.
We can often forget the second part. And you see the burnout, what I analyzed on leading a lot of people, right? The burnout happens, right? It can happen both ways. It can happen, hey, I have my dopamine up all the day, but the serotonin doesn't happen, because you know what? I'm spending 12 hours or 15 hours at work, right? And then it's work all the time, right? And it's a burnout, right? Or the opposite direction. Maybe I have a lot of friends, I'm very social, I have family, but you see, I don't have, like, achievements, professional achievements in my life, right? So when you analyze the burnouts, it's A or B usually.
Very interesting. We talked a bit about the frequent changes of jobs in the industry. There's a question how you deal with it, and I know that dealing with it in Google and dealing with it in a different company is very different because of how potential candidates look at Google as an employer. But still, if you can share some tips to stabilize team and team growth and retention, basically, in companies.
I mean, in reality, right, when the economy is doing good, and especially for our jobs, for the software engineering jobs, right, there are a lot of opportunities, right? And I think that we as software engineers, or the folks that are in this industry, we should be blessed, right? When you think about this, about the opportunities, it's when probably many of you have like a friends that are, I don't know, like linguists or translators or like economists, and like you see the pay scale, right, into those, like even lawyers, or you go into multiple professions and you see that our profession is getting on the top, on number being one, the most paid profession, and with the best kind of life balance and stuff like that, right? And that growth is changing. So what that means is that all of us and all of you will have like more opportunities next year and the year after that, because you know what, you probably know that saying that the software is eating up the world, right? So every industry and every company, it's not like an IT by a definition, right? It's transforming inside. Even you see the largest banks in US, right? You pick the largest one, Goldman and Sachs. They're saying, hey, like we are a software company now, right? By a core definition, right? No, you're a bank. No, we are a software company first, because like all of the systems inside, right? All of the infrastructure, right? Everything came online, right? A lot of ton of data, right? It needs to be analyzed. A lot of systems needs to be built, right? So inside that, right, there is inside every company, there is a transformation that company is becoming a software company. And you know what that means? That we need to hire far more software engineers that we had like 5 years from now or 3 years from now. So what that means is like we're in a very good position that like we all have a lot of opportunities, right, in the market to kind of switch jobs, right? So I advocate, right, I mean, like on switching jobs, right, there are multiple parameters, right, as all of you know, right? Whenever you're in a toxic environment, right, that you think you cannot fix, you try it out, go out, right? Because it's a responsibilities of the managers and the leaders, right, to create like a psychological safety. I consider that as like a P0, right? Everybody needs to express their thoughts freely, right? Bullying inside, like all of the, like especially, right, it's very sensitive, right? I'm really happy to see Katrina as a successful CEO of a company, but you all realize that let's look at the, like men and women disposition in the engineering roles, right? Engineering teams, it's extremely skewed, right? I have a 12-year-old daughter, right? And, like it's a problem in the industry, right? Overall. So, and it's hard, right? I mean, like when you're only woman in a team of, I don't know, like eight male co-workers, right? It's exceptionally hard, right? And a couple of comments there, right? And it's a very, like, it can create kind of very toxic environment if the environment is not supportive, right? So not only that you should go away, right? But when I think that you should speak up, right? It's very important, right? For every community of people, for every company, right? To build as healthy as possible environments, right? And it's very important for the management, right? To weed out the toxic people, right? So what I'm saying is like, when you analyze that person is actually kind of toxic to the culture, he can be like exceptional coder, right? I don't care, right? They're, like weird comments, 1 times, 2 times, right? I mean, like attitude, like the attitude at the end of the day is a key. So that's a variable that I want you to be all aware. Please don't stay in any companies, right? That or any kind of teams that you feel that the culture is like that. But before that, speak up, right? Because I think that the smart people that are in the management roles, and there's like significant culture change, especially in the last 10 years, towards bullying, towards attitude, towards having like a really kind of decent kind of psychological safety within the teams, and what you can actually do at work with your colleagues, and what you should do outside. which I'm very kind of cautious. I think everybody should be very cautious about. Sometimes we forget ourselves, right? We spend our days. Sometimes there are deadlines. Like working late and all the stuff. So you're with your colleagues, and your colleagues are sort of becoming your friends, right? But there has to be a healthy boundaries, right? So I always advise, when you're in situations like that, right, build your friends network outside of your work. Have that kind of circle, right? Your work cannot be your whole life. It's very important, because the dynamics may become kind of very unhealthy with your colleagues. So that's on changing jobs. That's my P0, right? Whenever in that environment, go change jobs. And then the other parameters are growth, satisfaction, compensation, and go think about this in the parameters, right? When you think about this, what does every person want at work, right? If you analyze that as the leader, what does every person want at work? So it usually boils down to around 4 things, right? They want autonomy, right? Nobody wants to be micromanaged. Oh, where are you? It's tomorrow, the day after that, 2 p.m., 1 p.m. Where is this? Where is that? Right? Nobody wants micromanagement. Everybody wants autonomy, right? Everybody wants to achieve something, right? To create kind of success, right? And be, number 3 is be recognized for that, right? Get a recognition, right? So I got autonomy, I got the task, I got the projects, I delivered, I achieved, I got recognized, and I got compensated very well. So that's kind of, we found that's like 4 things that every person wants, regardless of the industry at work. There's a lot of psychological analysis around this, right, on workers. So it's autonomy, right? It's achievement, getting recognized, and getting compensated well based on that. So if you're not getting that, right, you have to speak up. And before you switch your job, say, hey, I really enjoy this project, but you're checking on me every day, right? And I get sometimes stressed, right? Or, hey, I really got my specs up to the API names, and I'm really kind of strong engineer, right? I'm like, you really don't need to do that, right? I'm like, I know how to design software. Just define the problem for me, right? And I'll deliver that, right? Or, hey, listen, I'm not recognized. I create success. I didn't get a thank you. I didn't got a congratulations email. I didn't get called out at our weekly meeting or a monthly all hands meeting, or at the end of the day, hey, listen, I'm compensated like a 20% less or 30% less to what my level and the seniority in that city is, right? So when those variables are not there, speak up first, right? And then look for a change.
Great. I think this is a great question to wrap up our conversation. We are running out of time, and it's been a great pleasure. I'd like to have you here today, and thanks to the audience for the amazing engagement. We had very interesting questions coming from them. I just want to remind you all that this will go on our YouTube channel, so make sure to subscribe if you want to revisit some of the points that were made here. And also stay tuned for next month Fireside Chat. Alex, thank you once again. It's been a great pleasure to talk with you.
Cool. Thank you, Katerina. It was a really joy to talk to you. Thank you all for the great questions as well.
Bye, everyone.